Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Lianov. I'm the founder and president of the Global Positive Health Institute. Welcome to our GPHI podcast, where we talk about all things related to positive psychology, health, well-being, positive health, lifestyle medicine, and more. And today I'm very delighted to have with us as our guest, Jenny Hughes. She's a trauma psychologist and founder of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this will be very interesting, I think, to our listeners because it's a little bit different than some of the topics we've covered, and I love that we're covering new ground. So
Yeah.
first, tell us a little bit about what got you interested in this area of positive psychology and well-being, and then more specifically working with trauma patients and trauma therapists.
Yeah, so it's interesting. My journey with positive psychology actually starts back in grad school. One of my professors was Collie Connolly. Are you familiar with him? He does a lot of work in positive psychology, and like, full self-disclosure, when my first reaction to it was like, why are we talking about all this positive stuff? Like, this is not helpful. We need to talk about people's problems and what's going on. And it actually took me probably a good 10 years to really kind of come back and understand the power of this kind of work, that it's not about toxic positivity by any means, but of being able to really kind of like notice and soak in and acknowledge the positive things that are perhaps already happening in our lives, and then doing our best to make intentional choices to live in ways that are going to support and promote our own well-being, which often means making choices around positive things, as difficult as that is. So that's a long kind of answer to that first part of the question. And it's so interesting the way that it shows up in my work now, because I'm a trauma psychologist. So that's another thing, is like, I've always been a trauma person. And so when Collie was talking about all this positive psychology stuff, I was like, that's BS. I'm working with people with trauma. What does this have to do with any of it? And it takes time for things to, I think, settle and kind of like into someone's body and brain. But now it matters so much, especially in thinking about the relationship that we have with our patients and clients. And that's a big part of the work that I do in the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective, and with helpers and healers more broadly, is teach them about the concept of vicarious resilience, which is the counter to vicarious trauma. So it's kind of been my way of like holding true that there are problems, but noticing that there's a lot of positive stuff that goes along at the same time, and really being aware of how that shows up in our relationship with other people, whether that be the people we're serving or the people that we're working with.
Yeah, yes. And so the idea really is that despite adversity and challenges and trauma, we can grow from those experiences, which in positive psychology, and I think we've mentioned this in one of our podcasts, this idea of post-traumatic growth is one area that's very exciting in positive psychology. And it does overlap with what you're talking about there, the vicarious resilience. But please explain for our listeners what the difference is, and
Yeah.
how we approach those.
Yeah, you and I had such a cool conversation about this recently, where so post-traumatic growth, it is a much more well-known concept. I think primarily because it really talks about what it's like to experience trauma and then to be able to overcome that and be able to regain your quality of life, to start living again, and to really whether it's thrive or flourish in your life again, right? And then there's this post-traumatic growth where a lot of times as trauma survivors, once we're able to process and integrate a traumatic experience or a series of traumatic experiences, and we're kind of on that other side, we're able to see how that trauma really kind of informs the choices that we make today. And there's that post-traumatic growth of like, well, I know what it's like to go through this really awful experience, and that I'm capable of overcoming that. And that it can actually serve as like this fertilizer of all the seeds that we plant in the work that we do to allow things to grow and flourish on the other side. It's not about sugarcoating things, or of like, we get given, bad things in our lives to make us stronger. I don't really like looking at it in that way, but of really acknowledging that when we have the support and the resources that we need and deserve to be able to move through trauma, it really can give us a totally different perspective on life. And it can really invite us to make different decisions, to connect with people differently, to choose different things for how we spend our time. And those are aspects of post-traumatic growth. Now, post-traumatic growth is really specific to people who have experienced trauma, which I mean, we all have. And vicarious resilience is actually more specific to the helpers and healers, the professionals who are supporting that processing through the trauma or through any kind of helping. So for me as a trauma therapist, yes, I am doing that trauma work, but whether it is a primary care physician, a physical therapist, a teacher, it doesn't really matter. We can, in any kind of helping role, we can experience vicarious resilience because it's those moments when we see our clients, our patients, our students, when we see those glimmers, when we see little tiny kind of moments of progress maybe, or when we feel an even deeper connection together as humans, when are those big moments when we see these people reach their goals and all the work that they've been doing. And it's this two-way street where with vicarious resilience and vicarious trauma, we're getting to soak up those things as the provider, as the helper and healer. And with vicarious resilience in particular, it can be so energizing. It helps us remember why we do this work, why it matters. And I like to talk about it as this like renewable energy source for us in our role of serving others and helping them.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that description. And as you were speaking, I'm still like thinking that broader umbrella of positive psychology, which is that refocusing to the extent possible. So life can throw all kinds of wrenches in our way and challenges and mini traumas and mega traumas. And then there are ways that we can piece together elements of positive psychology, like our character strengths, like our spirituality. You talked about reframing of goals that helps us to move forward. But the overall theme is that the negative experiences that we have tend to be very sticky. And we're designed that way as social beings. And so we've got to proactively counter that sticky negative emotions, negative reminiscence, if you will, towards a more positive reminiscence, like, well, what else is going on in my life that's positive, or what positive things did come out of a trauma or a bad experience? It doesn't always happen for everybody, but asking that questions can open up the door for people. And so tell me more about how you're using this.
Yeah, one thing that I like to do both with my clients in therapy and also with the therapists and other helpers and healers that I support is really kind of look at things at this like 10,000 foot view. And I hear you describing that in a way as well. And we can zoom out and get this bird's eye view. We can really acknowledge and honor all the experiences in our lives. We can look at those traumas. We can look at those positive things. And by zooming out, it can help us to make informed decisions. And when we're making informed decisions, it means we're doing our best to kind of lay out all the information that we have available to us and then decide what is going to be most helpful for me? What is most realistic? What is going to really help me continue working towards the things I'm striving for, as opposed to getting me stuck, right, in that stickiness, or maybe taking me so far off course that I forget where I was going in the first place. And so I think with positive psychology, it is so helpful in that. And when we can take that 10,000 foot view and have a holistic image of everything that is in front of us and behind us, we can then, and when we have the right kind of supports too, right? So whether it is our colleagues, if we are a helper or healer ourselves, having other people who understand what it's like to go through different experiences, but having those supports along with this bird's eye view can really help us make choices that are going to be most healthy and helpful for us as humans, for us in relationship to others, and in our relationship to the world.
Yes, well said. And as you're describing this, and of course you're describing a lot of what you're doing in your professional life before we move on, are there any personal stories you're comfortable sharing about how you use this in your life, or your favorite tools, if you will, for making the most of this vicarious resilience and more?
Yeah, so specifically with vicarious resilience, I love being able to share personal stories about that because it actually is a very personal experience. So everyone is going to pick up on and notice vicarious resilience in different ways. A lot of times people ask me like, well, what's the cookie cutter approach? What do I have to know in order to access this amazing thing? And really the first part of it is being open to connecting with whomever you are serving as, whether it's a doctor or a therapist, whomever you are, you being open to that relationship with your client or patient is really key, because then we can feel all the energy and all the things that are going on in that interaction. And with vicarious resilience, sometimes it can show up in surprising or confusing ways. I've experienced it both when I get to witness my clients gain really like powerful insights or share about things that are changing in their life as a result of the work that they're doing. I've also experienced it when I have clients who are finally able to really feel and access grief, for example, where they've been holding on so tightly, and that grief has been holding them back from being able to really flourish and connect in their lives. And so for me, it's not really about the interaction or what is in front of me in my work as a trauma therapist, but what am I feeling in my body? And so when I'm experiencing vicarious resilience, a lot of times I describe it as like the warm fuzzies. I get like this energy, and it's almost like, I swear it's like this like fuzzy warm energy light that's in my body, and it's almost like it moves from here through the rest of my body. Sometimes I'll tear up because I'm just so deeply connected with this person, and whether those are tears of grief or tears of pride, it doesn't really matter. And a lot of times I'll end up with this really big goofy grin. Or I just feel so grounded and in the present. And recognizing those things happening in my body is really important, because those are the things that I can, when I notice them, and if I have a chance to really kind of acknowledge, maybe I write them down or I tell a colleague about it, that gets to enhance those experiences for me, which makes it that renewable energy source. And so, like I said, there's not kind of a step-by-step process to being able to recognize, install, and enhance vicarious resilience. But when we start to get curious about what those things are like in our bodies and our brains and in our relationships with others, we can start to notice it all over the place.
Wonderful. Well, we have in our listening audience a wide variety of health professionals and others. Most of them are not trauma therapists, but in one way or another, we all run across trauma, or we're working with patients who have experienced some trauma, and sometimes they're mini traumas. It's something big for that patient that they're experiencing that maybe others wouldn't experience as a trauma. We have to acknowledge that. And so, are there any lessons you have for our listening audience about how to make the most of this concept of vicarious resilience?
I think that if there's one takeaway that I would like people to have, is the importance of figuring out how to really enhance vicarious resilience for oneself. And a couple of things that I've found that really help for me and for members in Brave is, one, having a way to, whether it's write it down or if you like voice memos, documenting what it was like for you when you notice those physical reactions in a moment where you are helping someone else. And of course, we have to be careful about not, having personal health information. It has to be de-identified. I have a resource that I will share with your audience that I call the soft transition. That is a 3 to 5 minute exercise that can be a really great thing to do at the end of the day to help our brain and body kind of ground and center, and then notice experiences of vicarious resilience that happened that day. And then really, I think the greatest way of enhancing it is telling other colleagues who get it. So whether you're an oncologist or, whatever kind of specialty, as a healthcare professional or helper or healer that is listening, talking to other people that do your job or that practice in a similar way as you, that have similar kind of values and feel aligned in their practice, That's what really enhances the vicarious resilience. You know, it's like speaking our narratives brings it to life. And same thing when you get to tell someone like, oh my gosh, this most amazing thing happened between me and my patient today, and just describing what it was like to experience that in the moment. That truly is what makes it this renewable energy source. And it then opens you up to being able to make more informed decisions, to zoom out even more, and to be able to really kind of be aware of all the other things that are possible for you.
Yes. In positive psychology, some of the constructs that overlap with that, or maybe the same thing really, is being mindful of the moments, the good moments, and savoring them. And so by the
Yes.
retelling, the writing, and all of that you're describing, you're making it last, and then it get embedded in your memory bank, and you can even relive that positive experience down the line. You can go back through and remember the details of that experience, and your body will feel the same because your body won't know that it's not happening now. It happened in the past. It can't tell the difference.
Yep.
So that's the gift that keeps on giving, and that's wonderful.
Exactly.
And so you mentioned resources. So please share with us some of your favorite resources.
Yeah, so I will share with everyone my soft transitions worksheet. And then I also actually have a vicarious resilience tracker that both of those are free resources that I would love to be able to share. The vicarious resilience tracker can be really helpful when people are just learning about vicarious resilience. It walks through and gives examples of like what might vicarious resilience look like for you emotionally, physically, relationally, and occupationally. And it can be really helpful to kind of have some black and white, like concrete things to get started, and then to get curious about it and to track some of that stuff so that you're starting to train your brain and body to pick up on these things without you even having to think about it in your work. So both of those will be available. And then my website, braveproviders.com, is a really great resource. As you said it earlier, you know, much of the work I do right now is focused on working with other trauma therapists, but the concepts of vicarious trauma, vicarious resilience, they're applicable to any kind of helper or healer. And I've used these in working with nurses and doctors at large institutions as well. And it is a really powerful way to kind of like reframe our work and the kinds of things that we're doing with the people that we're serving.
That's so terrific. I imagine that proactively taking advantage of all of this will help to prevent burnout. We have so many health professionals dealing with burnout, and we're looking for every solution we can. And so this is a tool in that toolbox to help us. That's terrific.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, especially like with burnout, the primary cause or predictor of burnout are organizational factors. And whether that's someone in private practice and they are their organization, or you work in a huge organization, sometimes that's something that can be out of our control. And so when we are faced with that reality, having tools like this in our toolbox around how can I learn more about vicarious resilience and turn it into this renewable energy source, it can really make a big difference, even when you're faced with things that are really that you can't change.
Exactly. Turn inward and control what you can control, and
right.
Will help.
Serenity prayer.
help through a smoother transition when the outside world is rough. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, as we wrap up and we keep these podcasts brief, is there one takeaway message you'd like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I think just remember about how powerful the relationship is with the people that you're helping and healing and serving. You know, again, regardless of our specialty, we are working with other people. We go into this work to help them. And it's through that relationship that really powerful change can happen. Even if you are, you know, someone who's doing surgery, your relationship with your patient helps them to feel safe. It can help protect them post-op so that they have better outcomes, right? As a therapist, of course, so much of it is about the relationship. And when we really connect with and honor and engage in that relationship, that is the pathway to vicarious resilience. So it's not something that we can manufacture. We have to be open to connecting with the people that we're serving. And I know that that is really counterintuitive for a lot of people and can feel scary, but it is so incredibly empowering and freeing once you experience something like vicarious resilience and know that it's a safe thing to connect with the people that you're caring for.
Yeah, the root of that, I imagine, again, connecting to in positive psychology, connection, positive social connection is the most important element or tool. And that's what you're saying is that authentic connection actually is a positive thing, even if someone is experiencing some difficult times.
Yeah,
And then it's a win-win. It helps them, it helps us. So
exactly.
I love that. Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jenny Hughes, and hopefully we'll have you back some other time to share some more about your adventures. And thank you to our audience for following the GPHI podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, and look forward to seeing you again on one of these podcast sessions. And take care, be safe, be well.